Herman, I will ask you about your assessment of the Russian prospects for becoming a financial center. But before doing so, I would like to come back to this question of global imbalances, because some people would argue that those global imbalances are at the origin, actually, of the financial crisis. And when we speak about imbalances, we speak not only of imbalances on a global level, we speak also of imbalances on a European level. And I know, Minister, you have expressed yourself quite, let's say, lively about those issues. Would you like to make a comment how you see the capability of the international system and of the European Union to get those imbalances under control?
Well, I have expressed myself, and I'm not going to repeat myself, but in my view, it's going to be the big challenge of the years to come. We will go over the coordinated regulation effort. This is going to be a matter for negotiations, fine-tuning, making sure that it's all over the place and that we have the appropriate supervision authorities that will themselves coordinate their work on a regional and on a global basis. But the real trick will be later on, and we should start the exercise now, as encouraged by the IMF, under this framework for growth exercise that has been started at the G20 level, and we must conduct the same exercise at the European level, which consists of identifying our respective economic policies in the way that explores, develops, articulates the new growth that Thomas Miro referred to, which has to take into account the environmental challenge as not just a challenge but an opportunity to generate a different kind of growth, to expand our knowledge in different fields, to use energy in a different way, and so on and so forth, and that will be growth generating. But in addition to that, we also need to explore what I call the spillover effects.
I'd like to make a comment. You know, we always talk about global imbalances in sort of the traditional sense. I was in a session 2 weeks ago, and it was all around European competitiveness. And we actually, you know, the panel I was on started talking about a different type of global imbalance. And they talked about the imbalance in the spirit of entrepreneurship. And they were comparing if you look at the United States or North America, if you look at Europe, if you look at the emerging markets, and there was a perception there that there were dramatically different levels of entrepreneurship, higher in the United States, higher in the emerging markets than in Europe. They also looked then at what they called effort or work ethic. And they said that, you know, and these are gross generalizations and maybe offensive to people, and I apologize, but if people, oftentimes you hear in Europe when they're looking east or west, say that in the east or the west of Europe, you know, people are living to work, and in Europe, people are working in order to live. And if over a sustained basis, people are working 40 hours a week in one geography, 50 hours a week in another, and 60 hours a week in Asia, over time, that too has a competitiveness impact. And so I think there are multiple dimensions of global imbalances that we all need to recognize. They have an impact on growth.
It's a very complicated issue, and particularly we are at the World Economic Forum now engaged in a research project analyzing exports under the aspect of added value, because we are in a world which doesn't trade goods anymore, it trades tasks. Tasks which have been outsourced by multinational companies. But in this whole question of imbalances, energy plays a substantial role, and Gerard, being the head of one of the biggest energy companies, how do you see the impact of energy on global imbalances?
Thank you, Klaus. First, before going to energy, I would like to to say, in reaction to what I heard, that clearly the most immediate and urgent challenges are public debt to cope with, and the financial sector regulation and banking supervision. And I am confident in the capacity of all the governments now to take the best decisions, and especially in my own government and in my own Minister of Finance. But don't forget that if we solve these problems and these challenges at the world level, they will have big other challenges which are not solved. And going in the direction of Jim Wolfenson, I would mention simply water scarcity, access to water in the world, access to food, access to electricity, access to health, but also climate change, and we don't speak very much in those days about climate change. Last year it was different. Protection of the planet. And those are very important challenges. Now, going to energy. Energy is one of the biggest challenges for all the governments in the world, and the energy will impact also the imbalances, the economic and trade imbalances. Let's take a few examples. Let's take Europe, for example. In 20 years from now, Europe will have consumed the totality of its oil and gas reserves, and will have to import the totality of its consumption. Therefore, the energy bill of Europe will dramatically increase, which is probably a good news for our Russian friends and for my colleagues of Gazprom. But also, reversely, this bill, energy bill, can be reduced, and very strongly, by first massive renewable energy, wind energy, solar, biomass, and the intention of Europe is to cut by 20% in 2020 the consumption and the use also of renewable. Energy efficiency will be very useful. Nuclear energy also can bring a part of the solution to restore the financial autonomy, the energy autonomy of Europe. For the USA, there will be two contradictory effects on the energy external balance of the USA. The unconventional gas will have a positive effect, and the consequences of the BP oil spill, a negative effect. I explain. The unconventional gas, in 2009, the unconventional gas produced in the US has been equivalent to the production of conventional gas. And this has two consequences. First, USA has stopped their imports of gas last year and became the #1 gas producer in the world again. They, in the past, had been surpassed by Russia, but today they are #1 again. By the way, thanks to unconventional gas, the world reserves have doubled from 60 years to more. And China has now the means to develop its own production, domestic production, at the same time in natural gas, in coal, in renewable, in nuclear, and in long term in clean coal with carbon capture and storage. And therefore, in some years, probably, that China will import less commodities, energy commodities. Therefore, it's very difficult to know if the shift in energy consumption in the coming years will impact positively or negatively the imbalances. It will depend on the countries, but we know that some countries which have no domestic energy resources We will have a situation which will be sometimes difficult and sometimes dramatic.